But the project is controversial. It could leave Afghanistan's neighbors high and dry.
Megaprojects. When you hear the word, you probably think of China, Saudi Arabia, or the US, countries known for massive infrastructure projects. But since 2022, one country has unexpectedly entered the conversation: Afghanistan. Yes, Afghanistan is now at the center of a controversial megaproject that has its neighbors on high alert. The Taliban is spearheading the construction of an artificial river, a project that could reshape the region's water supply. But here's the problem. This isn't just about engineering, it's about survival. By diverting billions of gallons of water, Afghanistan risks cutting off vital resources to 4 other countries, sparking fears of an environmental and geopolitical crisis. How did this project come to be? And what happens when water, already scarce in this region, becomes a bargaining chip? Stay tuned, because this story is bigger than you think. Reviving a decades-old vision. The vision of constructing a massive water diversion project in Afghanistan first emerged in the mid-20th century, spearheaded by Mohammed Daoud Khan. As a forward-thinking leader, Daoud prioritized Afghanistan's development, aiming to harness the Amu Darya to boost the nation's agricultural sector. He believed that redirecting part of the river's water could turn barren lands into fertile fields, reducing Afghanistan's dependence on food imports and ensuring long-term food security. However, his ambitions never progressed beyond early discussions and preliminary planning due to political turmoil, financial constraints, and a lack of necessary infrastructure. The Amu Darya, stretching 1,490 miles, plays a crucial role in the survival and economy of Central Asia. Its vast 206,000 square mile watershed sustains a massive water discharge of 25 trillion gallons per year, making it one of the most vital rivers in the region. Only the Seer Darya, located further north, compares in scale and significance. The Amu Darya originates in Tajikistan, flowing through Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, before it once emptied into the Aral Sea. However, excessive water use over decades has left the Aral Sea nearly dry. For years, these 4 countries have relied heavily on the Amu Darya for drinking water, agriculture, and hydroelectric power. The river is not just a source of fresh water, it is a lifeline for millions. However, its true economic value lies in irrigation, which supports the agricultural sectors that dominate the economies of Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. Any disruption to its flow could have severe consequences, making every nation along its path deeply invested in its stability. For decades, Afghanistan's Kosh-Tepe Canal remained an unrealized ambition. The idea of an artificial river raised concerns among neighboring countries that relied on the Amu Darya's steady flow. Diverting significant amounts of water from the river could worsen water scarcity, increasing tensions in a region already facing resource disputes. However, in March 2022, Afghanistan took a bold step forward. Government officials officially announced the start of construction on the long-delayed Kosh-Tepe Canal, transforming decades of speculation into action. By January 2023, photographs surfaced, confirming rapid progress on the project. Workers had already begun excavation, reinforcing the canal's structure and shaping the land to guide the water's flow. What had once been only a concept had now become a reality. This ambitious project closely mirrors Mohammed Daoud Khan's original vision. By building the Kosh-Tepe Canal, Afghanistan hopes to revolutionize its agricultural industry. If completed successfully, the canal could transform large expanses of dry land into thriving farmland, significantly improving food production and reducing the country's reliance on expensive imports. A self-sufficient Afghanistan could stabilize its economy, create thousands of jobs, and improve the quality of life for its citizens. Despite the promising benefits, the project raises serious concerns for Afghanistan's neighbors. Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan depend heavily on the Amu Darya for irrigation. Uzbekistan, in particular, faces major challenges as the river has historically been one of the primary water sources feeding the now dried-up Aral Sea. If Afghanistan diverts even more water, the environmental damage in the region could escalate, further accelerating desertification and worsening existing water shortages. The decision to move forward with the Qush-Tepe Canal adds another layer of complexity to long-standing water disputes in Central Asia. Conflicts over water rights have sparked diplomatic disputes and even military tensions in the past. Many experts fear that Afghanistan's project could trigger further instability, straining relations with neighboring countries and sparking new diplomatic challenges. Afghanistan remains determined to control its natural resources and assert its independence. Officials have framed the Qush-Tepe Canal as a step toward national sovereignty, emphasizing that securing water for agriculture is essential for the country's long-term stability. While concerns over regional water politics remain, Afghanistan shows no signs of slowing down construction. The rapid construction of the Qush-Tepe Canal, a feat of engineering and determination. In the first stage of construction, Afghanistan made remarkable progress in building the Qush-Tepe Canal, an ambitious project that aims to reshape the country's agricultural landscape. The initial phase focused on laying the route from the Amu Darya to the Dawlatabad area in Balkh province, a task that engineers and workers completed with astonishing speed. Initially, they planned to complete this stage within 24 months, but they finished it in just 18 months, a testament to the efficiency and dedication behind the project. The first section of the canal, stretching 67 miles, cost around 8.2 billion Afghanis, which is approximately $94 million. What makes this project even more remarkable is that all the funding comes exclusively from Afghanistan's domestic revenue. Unlike many other major infrastructure projects in developing nations, this one has not received financial support from international organizations or foreign governments. To put the financial burden into perspective, $94 million accounts for about 8% of Afghanistan's total domestic revenue collected in the first 8 months of 2022. While this is a substantial portion of the country's budget, the long-term economic benefits are expected to far outweigh the costs. Experts estimate that once fully operational, the Qush-Tepe Canal could generate approximately $500 million per year, primarily through increased agricultural productivity and improved irrigation infrastructure. Following the completion of the first stage, the second phase of construction began in the Dawlatabad area of Balkh province and extended further into the Ankoy district of Faryab province. By the end of December 2024, authorities announced that this phase was nearing completion, with 81% of the section finalized. Looking at the project as a whole, construction has already reached 61% completion. In less than 3 years since March 2022, workers have successfully built a staggering 110-mile canal, a remarkable achievement given the scale and complexity of the project. To appreciate the enormity of this effort, one only has to look at the vast stretches of land already transformed by the canal's path. Unparalleled speed and scale of construction. The rapid progress of the Qush-Tepe Canal is even more impressive, considering the extensive groundwork involved. Unlike simple canal projects, this megaproject requires extensive surveying, soil studies, and additional infrastructure development. Engineers must assess the terrain stability and ensure the canal's long-term sustainability. In addition to digging the main waterway, crews are also constructing bridges over the canal and integrating underground irrigation pipelines. These features will allow for efficient water distribution across vast agricultural lands, maximizing the canal's impact. Moreover, authorities have launched a massive effort to plant thousands of trees along the canal's banks. These trees serve a crucial role in stabilizing the soil, reducing erosion, and preventing land degradation. Beyond the sheer size of the excavation work, the volume of soil being moved is staggering. Every day, workers remove up to 35 million cubic feet of soil, a figure that highlights the immense scale of the project. This effort requires a highly coordinated workforce, along with a vast fleet of heavy machinery operating around the clock. A workforce of thousands and an army of machinery. The pace at which the Qush-Tepe Canal is being built reflects the immense manpower and resources committed to the project. Over 200 subcontractors are involved in various aspects of construction, ensuring that different phases progress simultaneously. Meanwhile, approximately 5,500 workers are actively engaged in building the canal, each contributing to one of the most ambitious infrastructure projects in Afghanistan's history. To meet the project's demanding schedule, construction teams have deployed a staggering 300 pieces of heavy machinery, including excavators, bulldozers, and cranes. These machines work day and night to excavate soil, lay concrete reinforcements, and shape the canal's final structure. The continuous 24/7 work cycle ensures that no time is wasted, allowing for rapid completion of each section. The level of coordination and dedication seen in the Kosh-Tepe Canal project demonstrates Afghanistan's commitment to self-reliance and long-term economic development. If the canal continues at this pace, it could soon become one of the most transformative infrastructure projects in the region, securing Afghanistan's agricultural future and reshaping the economic landscape for generations to come. The challenges and geopolitical tensions surrounding the Kosh-Tepe Canal. Despite the rapid progress made so far, the Kosh-Tepe Canal project still has a long way to go. Once completed, the canal is expected to stretch 177 miles, transforming Afghanistan's agricultural landscape. However, achieving this goal will require a massive financial commitment, with the total project estimated to cost around $684 million. While this figure may not seem overwhelming compared to the infrastructure budgets of major global powers like the United States or China, for Afghanistan, it represents a staggering investment. To put it into perspective, $94 million accounted for 8% of the country's domestic revenue in just the first 8 months of 2022. Funding a project of this scale with limited resources is an extraordinary challenge, and the rush to complete it has already led to serious issues. Early setbacks, the canal breach, and structural weaknesses. One of the first major setbacks came in early 2023 when satellite images revealed a significant breach in the canal. The break caused an estimated 26 billion gallons of water to spill into the surrounding desert, a massive loss for a project designed to conserve and distribute water efficiently. This incident exposed a critical flaw in the canal's construction: the lack of concrete lining. Without proper reinforcement, the soil could not contain the immense volume of water, leading to structural failures. Yet, given Afghanistan's limited resources and the urgency of the project, authorities had little choice but to continue building without making major changes. Despite the setback, workers quickly repaired the breach and resumed digging. The focus remained on meeting deadlines rather than implementing large-scale engineering solutions. While the urgency is understandable, the absence of reinforced concrete lining raises concerns about long-term sustainability. Without proper reinforcements, future leaks, collapses, or sediment buildup could undermine the canal's effectiveness. If completed as planned, the Kosh-Tepe Canal could solve major agricultural problems for Afghanistan. By providing a reliable irrigation source, it has the potential to revitalize farmlands, increase food production, and boost economic growth. In a country where agriculture remains a key sector, improved access to water could provide long-term stability and prosperity. However, while the canal could be a game-changer for Afghanistan, it poses serious risks for neighboring countries. The Amu Darya River, which feeds the canal, is an essential water source for multiple nations. Any large-scale diversion of its flow will create ripple effects across Central Asia, affecting Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Tajikistan. Historically, water distribution from the Amu Darya has been a sensitive topic. During the Soviet era, an official agreement, Protocol 566, established how the river's resources would be divided among the republics. Under this 1987 agreement, Uzbekistan received 48.2% of the river's water supply. Tajikistan got 15.4%, Turkmenistan claimed 35.8%, and Kyrgyzstan received just 0.6%. At that time, Afghanistan received nothing, as it was not part of the Soviet Union. After the USSR collapsed and water-sharing agreements were revised, Afghanistan remained excluded from official allocations. The country has long relied on informal water use, but has never been granted a fixed share under international agreements. The diplomatic dilemma, water rights, and regional tensions. Afghanistan's decision to move forward with the Kosh-Tepe Canal without international negotiations has escalated tensions with its neighbors. Since the Amu Darya serves as a primary water source for irrigation, drinking water, and hydroelectric power in Central Asia, any disruption could trigger economic and environmental consequences. Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, both heavily dependent on irrigation for agriculture, have expressed concerns about how the canal might reduce their water supply. If Afghanistan diverts billions of gallons each year, it could exacerbate water shortages in an already water-stressed region. Tajikistan, meanwhile, faces its own challenges, as it relies on the Amu Darya for hydroelectric power. Any reduction in water flow could impact energy production, leading to economic losses and potential power shortages. Despite these concerns, Afghanistan has not formally engaged in water-sharing talks with its neighbors, leaving many questions unanswered. Without clear agreements, the construction of the Kosh-Tepe Canal could escalate into a major diplomatic crisis, with regional disputes over water rights, economic priorities, and national security. Even today, Afghanistan lacks an officially allocated share of water from the Amu Darya River. For decades, the former Soviet republics, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan, have relied on water allocations established under Soviet-era agreements. These nations built their irrigation infrastructures around those allocations, adapting their economies and agricultural industries accordingly. Meanwhile, Afghanistan withdrew water freely, but its lack of stability prevented it from building significant infrastructure to capture and store large amounts of water. Now, the situation has changed dramatically, with Afghanistan constructing the Kosh-Tepe Canal, which is expected to divert 2.6 trillion gallons of water annually. Its neighbors find themselves facing an unprecedented crisis. Among the most affected nations, Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan stand to suffer the worst consequences. These two countries sit downstream from where Afghanistan is diverting the water, making them highly vulnerable to any reductions in Amu Darya's flow. A study found that once the canal is fully operational, the combined share of Amu Darya's water reaching these countries will shrink from 80% to 65%. This 15% reduction might not seem catastrophic on the surface, but for countries that rely heavily on agriculture, even a small dip in water supply could lead to severe economic and environmental fallout. Turkmenistan, for example, depends on water from Amu Darya to grow cotton for export and wheat for domestic consumption. The production of these two essential crops accounts for 10% of the nation's GDP. A decrease in water availability could cripple its economy, reducing exports, increasing food shortages, and creating economic instability. The situation looks even worse for Uzbekistan, where agriculture plays an even bigger role. In 2021, Uzbekistan ranked as the sixth largest cotton producer in the world, cultivating over 2.4 million acres and producing more than 1 million tons of cotton. This industry employs nearly half of Uzbekistan's workforce, directly or indirectly supporting 40% of the country's population. With less water available for irrigation, Uzbekistan faces a devastating domino effect. Lower cotton yields will lead to reduced export revenue, job losses, and economic hardship. The country's economy is deeply intertwined with cotton farming, so any disruption in water supply will reverberate across multiple industries. While reduced water flow is a major concern, the Kosh-Tepe Canal also threatens to accelerate one of the world's worst environmental disasters, the disappearance of the Aral Sea. The Aral Sea was once one of the largest lakes on Earth, but decades of water diversion from the Amu Darya have caused it to shrink dramatically. A stark comparison of satellite images from 1997, 2016, and today reveals how the once vast sea has nearly vanished, leaving behind nothing but a dry desert wasteland known as the Aralkum Desert. Southern Uzbekistan, once home to thriving fishing communities along the Aral Sea, now faces an ecological catastrophe. The ships that once navigated its waters sit abandoned in the sand, silent relics of a lost industry. What remains is a lifeless, expanding desert, incapable of sustaining life. The Amu Darya used to flow directly into the Aral Sea, but over the years, its water was redirected for agricultural use. Even before the construction of the Kosh-Tepe Canal, the river's reduced flow meant it no longer reached the Aral Sea. Now, with Afghanistan planning to divert an additional 2.6 trillion gallons per year, the situation will deteriorate further. Experts warn that if Amu Darya's water supply drops even more, any hope of restoring the Aral Sea will vanish entirely. Environmental scientists agree that if the Amu Darya's flow continues to decline, the Aralkum Desert will continue to expand, creating severe consequences for Uzbekistan. The loss of the Aral Sea's water ecosystems will permanently wipe out fish species, like the Amu Darya sturgeon, and disrupt wetlands, floodplains, and surrounding wildlife. Additionally, the spread of the Aralkum Desert poses a significant health hazard. The dry, sandy terrain generates dust storms filled with toxic salt and pesticide residues, which can travel hundreds of miles, impacting the health of millions of people in Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Kazakhstan. The far-reaching consequences of the Aralkum Desert. The environmental devastation caused by the drying of the Aral Sea extends far beyond Central Asia, with its effects being felt thousands of miles away. The Aralkum Desert, which has replaced what was once a thriving body of water, is now one of the world's largest sources of wind erosion, covering an area of more than 14,600 square miles. Each year, winds carry about 100 million tons of toxic salts, dust, and sand from the Aralkum, spreading these particles across vast distances. These airborne pollutants don't just stay within Uzbekistan or Turkmenistan. They have been detected in the blood of penguins in Antarctica, the glaciers of Greenland, the forests of Norway, and even the fields of Belarus. This phenomenon underscores how a local ecological disaster can quickly escalate into a global environmental crisis. The dust from the Aralkum Desert isn't just harmless sand. It is a toxic mix of pesticides, mineral fertilizers, and harmful chemicals that were once used for irrigation and agriculture in Soviet times. People living near the Aralkum Desert inhale these toxic particles daily, leading to severe respiratory diseases, cardiovascular issues, and various cancers. Livestock, crops, and entire ecosystems suffer as the contaminated dust pollutes soil and water sources, further worsening the already fragile agricultural economy in Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan. With climate change accelerating and desertification worsening, the construction of the Kosh-Tepe Canal could exacerbate these problems. By diverting an additional 2.6 trillion gallons of water per year from the Amu Darya River, the flow reaching the Aral Sea will decrease even further, worsening the Aralkum crisis. Some argue that Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan won't lose all their water, as the Amu Darya still holds substantial reserves. But the reduction could be enough to push both countries to the brink of a water crisis. The combined impact of Afghanistan's new irrigation plans and ongoing climate change could make it nearly impossible for Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan to sustain their agricultural industries, putting millions of livelihoods at risk. A desperate need for development. Despite the devastation the Kosh-Tepe Canal may cause to its neighbors, Afghanistan isn't building the canal just to create problems. It is acting out of sheer necessity. Decades of war, instability, and economic hardship have left the country with few opportunities for economic growth. Food insecurity, water shortages, and high unemployment continue to plague Afghanistan, making projects like the Kosh-Tepe Canal critical for national survival. Even during construction, the project has created thousands of jobs, offering desperately needed employment opportunities. By 2023, Afghanistan's unemployment rate had reached 14.39%, a staggering figure that highlights the nation's economic struggles. The canal's construction alone has provided work to thousands of laborers, boosting local economies and giving people an opportunity to earn a living. While this may seem insignificant for a country of 42 million people, the impact is still meaningful. Once complete, the Kosh-Tepe Canal will transform the northern provinces of Afghanistan, turning vast stretches of barren land into fertile agricultural zones. For Afghanistan, this project represents a new era, a chance to build a self-sufficient agricultural sector and reduce its reliance on foreign aid and food imports. Currently, most of Afghanistan's land is unsuitable for farming, as it is dominated by mountains, plateaus, and arid terrain. Only a small portion of the country has fertile soil, but even in those areas, farming remains limited due to water scarcity. While the southern regions of Afghanistan contain more open land, they are dominated by the unforgiving Rajasthan Desert. Spanning 15,400 square miles, this vast desert experiences harsh climate conditions, including freezing temperatures in winter, blistering summer heat reaching 113 degrees Fahrenheit, and violent dust storms that transport salt and sand across the region. With only sparse vegetation, such as wormwood and ephemerals, and nomadic livestock herders, the Rajasthan Desert remains completely unsuitable for large-scale farming. This leaves northern Afghanistan as the only viable region for agricultural expansion. However, water scarcity has long limited productivity. The Kosh-Tepe Canal aims to solve this problem by bringing irrigation to an area that has struggled with droughts and low agricultural output for decades. By redirecting water from the Amu Darya, Afghanistan hopes to create farmland that can sustain local communities, boost food production, and strengthen the economy. Balancing development with regional stability. Afghanistan's need for agricultural expansion is undeniable, but the Qosh-Tepe Canal raises serious geopolitical concerns. The Amu Darya River has always been a shared resource, supporting millions of people across multiple nations. However, Afghanistan has never been officially included in international agreements regarding the river's use. When the Soviet Union collapsed, its former republics, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan, continued to follow Soviet-era water agreements, which allocated specific water shares to each country. Afghanistan was not included in these agreements, meaning that for decades it has taken water as needed without any formal restrictions. However, those informal arrangements worked because Afghanistan lacked the infrastructure to extract significant amounts of water. Now, with the Qosh-Tepe Canal nearing completion, Central Asian countries are suddenly realizing the scale of the challenge they face. This project will drastically alter the balance of water distribution, reducing Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan's water supply and putting their agricultural economies at risk. Experts warn that if a diplomatic resolution isn't reached, the Qosh-Tepe Canal could trigger a major regional crisis. Water disputes have historically led to conflicts, and with climate change worsening and resources becoming scarcer, tensions over water security could escalate into serious political confrontations. Afghanistan, for its part, maintains that it has every right to utilize the Amu Darya's water, arguing that the country has been deprived of its fair share for decades. Afghan officials insist that the canal will not take more water than necessary, and that negotiations with neighboring countries are ongoing. However, the lack of a formal water-sharing agreement between Afghanistan and its neighbors remains a major issue. If Afghanistan continues with its plans without cooperation, the risk of water shortages, economic instability, and diplomatic tensions will only increase. The question now is whether Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Afghanistan can reach a fair and sustainable solution, or if the Qosh-Tepe Canal will become a flashpoint for regional conflict. Afghanistan's race against climate and economic despair. In Afghanistan's flat northern regions, rainfall remains scarce. Unlike other South Asian countries, Afghanistan doesn't benefit from seasonal monsoons, making it heavily reliant on meltwater from snow and glaciers in the mountains. However, this water supply is unpredictable, making agriculture a constant struggle. The situation worsened drastically in 2021, when low snowfall led to the worst drought in decades. Farmers, already struggling with harsh conditions, faced an agricultural collapse. The loss of crops and dwindling water resources triggered mass unemployment, forcing families into desperate migration in search of food and jobs. Unemployment skyrocketed, jumping from just under 12% in 2021 to over 14% in 2022. The lack of political stability and economic opportunities played a role, but water shortages were the biggest crisis. The drought also exposed Afghanistan's fragile infrastructure, leaving only 42% of the population with access to clean water and just 27% of rural areas with proper sanitation. For many Afghans, the solution seemed obvious: pump groundwater. However, the high cost of drilling and maintaining wells made this nearly impossible for most families. With limited options, thousands of people abandoned their homes, moving from drought-stricken provinces to regions with slightly more water. The 2021 migration crisis remains uncounted, but if history is any indicator, it was significant. In 2018, another severe drought forced 260,000 people to relocate across 22 out of Afghanistan's 34 provinces. Each climate disaster eroded the country's stability further, pushing its people closer to hunger and economic ruin. Unfortunately, experts warn that Afghanistan's climate will only get worse. Rising temperatures, unpredictable rainfall, and an expanding desert threaten the livelihoods of millions. As the population continues to grow, the demand for water and food will only intensify. This explains Afghanistan's urgency in building the Qosh-Tepe Canal. The project isn't just about irrigation, it's a desperate attempt to prevent another humanitarian crisis, particularly in the north. Qosh-Tepe Canal, a lifeline for northern Afghanistan. The Qosh-Tepe Canal, once completed, will irrigate over 1.36 million acres of dry, abandoned land in northern Afghanistan. This project offers two immediate benefits. First, it will provide fresh drinking water to thousands of people who currently struggle to access it. For a country where water scarcity is a daily battle, this alone justifies the project. Second, the canal will kickstart an agricultural revolution. Fertile land will no longer go to waste, allowing farmers to plant crops at an unprecedented scale. This transformation has already begun. Even though the canal remains unfinished, Afghan farmers haven't waited to begin its benefits. Water has already started flowing through the first sections, and fields are being prepped for cultivation. Soon, the first crops will be planted, bringing food security to the region. Once the Kashtepa Canal is fully operational, Afghanistan could eliminate hunger in its northern provinces and potentially feed other regions as well. The impact of turning barren land into thriving farmland will extend far beyond just food. The project is expected to generate over 250,000 permanent jobs, a massive increase from the 5,500 jobs during construction. For a nation with high unemployment, this could change countless lives. However, there's a potentially dangerous side effect to the emergence of new fertile lands: opium poppy cultivation, preventing the return of the opium economy. For decades, opium poppies were Afghanistan's most profitable crop. The country produced over 90% of the world's heroin, making opium cultivation one of Afghanistan's largest industries. At its peak in 2022, farmers dedicated nearly 500,000 acres of land to opium poppies, producing over 6,000 tons of opium annually. The crop became an economic crutch, supporting thousands of farmers and traffickers, but also fueling the drug trade. However, in April 2022, Afghanistan's new leadership issued a nationwide ban on opium cultivation. The crackdown was swift and severe. Within a year, poppy fields vanished, and opium production dropped to nearly zero. While this was a victory in fighting the drug trade, it left many farmers without a way to make a living. Some feared that once the Kashtepa Canal opened up new farmland, poppy cultivation would return. However, Afghan officials insist that the era of opium farming is over. They have pledged to use the newly irrigated lands exclusively for legal crops, such as wheat, fruits, and vegetables. With 250,000 jobs on the horizon, the hope is that farmers will embrace legal alternatives rather than return to illicit drug cultivation. Alright, so that's it for this video. And if you want to watch more amazing content like this, check out some of our other videos. Bye.